Mike Sealer.
And I'm Dawn Baker. Tonight, we continue to follow that deadly shooting inside the Smith State Prison over the weekend. It happened yesterday morning. The Georgia Department of Corrections says 24-year-old Orion Grace was working as a food service employee for Aramark in the prison when inmate Jreka Hart, who was in a personal relationship with her, shot her and then himself.
A maximum security prison. Over 1,500 of Georgia's most dangerous inmates behind those walls. Armed guards, watchtowers, metal detectors at every entrance. Everything that is supposed to make a place like that impossible to penetrate. And on the morning of June 16, 2024, a 24-year-old mother walked through those doors to start the breakfast shift and never walked back out. What happened inside that kitchen was not random. It did not come out of nowhere. There were warnings, there were tips, there was confirmed intelligence. Before we get into it, leave a like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Crime Yard so you don't miss the next case. Orion Chavea Grace was 24 years old. She was from Statesboro, Georgia. She graduated from Statesboro High School and built her life right there in her hometown, close to the people who loved her and the community she had grown up in. The people who knew her were consistent about who she was: warm, caring, genuinely present for the people around her. She had a laugh that could pull anyone in, and a smile her family said was entirely her own. Orion had two children, a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old son. Those two kids were the engine behind every decision she made. Her family has been open about the kind of mother she was. She would work 11 to 14 days straight, back-to-back shifts without complaint because her children needed to be taken care of and she was going to be the one to do it. She also had a direction. Orion was saving money to go to nursing school. Healthcare was the path she had set for herself. A stable career, a better income, a future she was building one paycheck at a time. She was doing everything right by her kids. In January 2024, Orion took a new job with Aramark, a Philadelphia-based company that holds the contract to manage food services at Smith State Prison in Glenville, Georgia. Her position was in the kitchen, prepping and serving meals for the inmate population. She commuted in from Statesboro every day, showed up, did her job, and went home to her children. She had only been there a few months when everything in her life shifted. Smith State Prison sits in Glenville, Georgia, in Tatnall County, deep in the lower coastal plain of the state's southeast region. It is a close security facility. More than 1,500 inmates live there at any given time. The grounds include multiple housing units, administrative buildings, reinforced perimeter fencing, armed watchtowers, and a front entrance equipped with metal detectors that everyone, staff, visitors, contractors, must pass through before entering. On paper, that is a facility built to contain anything. In reality, Smith State Prison had been showing serious cracks in its foundation for over a year before Orion ever started her job there. In February 2023, the prison's warden, Brian Adams, was arrested. The charges included racketeering, bribery, falsifying statements, and violating his oath of public office. Every single one of those charges was tied to a contraband smuggling operation that had been running through that facility on his watch. He was fired. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation handled the case. What that investigation revealed was not a few bad actors on the floor. The corruption that reached the person at the very top of the institution. Then, in October 2023, an inmate attacked and took the life of 42-year-old correctional officer Robert Clark inside Smith State Prison. Robert Clark was struck from behind with a homemade weapon while escorting inmates. He did not survive. That was the first fatal staff attack at that facility. As events would show it was not going to be the last. At the same time, the Georgia Department of Corrections was already under a federal probe by the United States Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, an investigation that had been active since September 2021 with no public findings released. So when Orion Grace walked into Smith State Prison in January 2024 for her first shift, she was walking into a facility where the warden had recently been arrested for running contraband, a correctional officer had recently lost his life, and federal investigators were already examining the entire system. That context matters, because what was already moving inside those walls in January 2024 was about to intersect directly with her life. Jreka Hart was 34 years old and had been incarcerated at Smith State Prison since 2015. He was convicted in Carroll County, Georgia, for voluntary manslaughter and aggravated battery, offenses he committed in 2013. He was serving a 20-year sentence. His maximum release date was June 2043, almost 2 full decades from where he was sitting. Hart had earned a place on the kitchen detail. Inmates who get kitchen assignments are generally those whose conduct inside the facility has been deemed acceptable enough to allow supervised movement outside their housing units. Kitchen detail means proximity to civilians. It means daily contact with people who are not inmates. It means a routine that places someone in a consistent, repeated position alongside staff. Hart was also reportedly active on social media while incarcerated. That is not a small detail. Inmates are not allowed to have phones. The fact that he had one and was using it regularly tells you exactly what kind of access contraband had inside that facility, the same access the warden's own arrest had already confirmed was deeply embedded. It was in that kitchen that Hart and Orion met, both working the same shift, both in the same space every morning. Somewhere between January and June of 2024, a personal relationship developed between them. The Georgia Department of Corrections confirmed this. The precise details of how it started and how far it went were never fully disclosed. What is known is that it happened, and it was in direct violation of the policy that every employee at a correctional facility is made aware of before their first shift. Orion knew the rules. Anyone who takes a job inside a prison knows those rules. But Hart was, by multiple accounts, deliberate in how he engaged with people. He had time, something people on the outside rarely have in abundance. Time to pay attention, time to be consistent, time to make someone feel like the most important person in the room. And inside an environment designed to be cold and transactional, that kind of focused attention can feel like something real. Now, running alongside everything unfolding between Hart and Orion, something else had been inside Smith State Prison since the summer of 2023. This is the part of the story where the institution's failure becomes impossible to ignore. Investigators determined that a firearm was introduced into Smith State Prison sometime between late June and early July of 2023. The weapon was allegedly thrown over the outer perimeter fence. Once it cleared that fence, it did not sit still. It moved through the facility's internal network, passed from one inmate to the next, each handoff keeping it in circulation and out of the sight of staff. Eventually, Jreka Hart became the one holding it. By January 2024, the exact same month Orion started her job, inmates with contraband phones were already taking photographs of that weapon and passing those images around inside the prison. A loaded firearm being documented on devices that should not have existed inside a facility that was supposed to be impossible to penetrate. Brian Randolph, a civil rights advocate with the Human and Civil Rights Coalition of Georgia, says that back in May 2023, before the weapon even made it over that fence, he received a tip that a firearm was going to be delivered to the facility via drone. He contacted the Georgia Department of Corrections directly. He sent a message to the department's general counsel laying out exactly what he had been told.
Everything else that could be in there, a freaking gun was introduced into the facility, and now you have 2 dead people. So I think, that's my frustration.
The department investigated through their Office of Professional Standards. No leads were developed. The case was closed. Randolph says he never heard another word about it. The firearm came. It moved. It stayed. And by early 2024, photographs of it were circulating on phones inside the same kitchen where a civilian food service employee was working every single morning. On June 13th, 2024, 3 days before the shooting, the Georgia Department of Corrections reportedly received confirmed intelligence that a firearm was concealed somewhere inside Smith State Prison. The weapon was not located. The person holding it was not identified or separated from the general population. Nothing stopped what was already in motion. On the morning of June 16th, 2024, Orion arrived at the Smith State Prison kitchen just before 4:30 a.m. to start the breakfast shift. It was a Sunday. She had been working that job for about 5 months. Jreka Hart had kitchen duty that same morning. At approximately 4:30 a.m., Hart opened fire inside the kitchen.
There's no way that she could have brought it in based off the security she has to go through. It's the security elsewhere that's lacking, and we believe this firearm was actually brought in prior to her ever working there.
Orion was struck and did not survive. She was pronounced gone at the scene. Hart was also found wounded and was transported to a nearby hospital where he lost his life from his injuries. The Georgia prison system was placed on full lockdown. All visitations at Smith State were canceled. Special investigators were called in. Local law enforcement secured the scene. On a stainless counter inside that kitchen, investigators found a folded note written in neat blue ink. Hart had left it behind before that morning. The alleged contents, as described by investigators, read, "Ari, I told you nobody else gets your smile. If I can't see it, nobody will. I love you. Forgive me." Read those words carefully. That is not the language of a person in pain. That is the language of possession, of control. The idea that her smile, something that belonged entirely to her, was something he had ownership over, that if he could not be the one to see it, then no one should. Those words tell you everything you need to know about what this relationship had become. Hart was a man with no release date on the near horizon, a sentence that stretched nearly 2 more decades. When it appeared that Orion had begun to distance herself from whatever had developed between them, that became the thing he was not willing to accept. DeShonda Haggins, Orion's mother, did not get a phone call from the Georgia Department of Corrections telling her that her daughter was gone. She found out through social media. An inmate inside Smith State Prison used a contraband phone, one of the same kinds of devices that had been used to photograph the weapon months earlier, to reach a family member of Orion's. Word spread online before the Department of Corrections had made a single official notification. By the time the department was ready to contact the family, DeShonda and her relatives had already driven themselves to the prison. A Georgia Department of Corrections spokesperson confirmed that the family arrived on their own, were escorted to a private area of the facility, and remained there for approximately 7 hours while investigators gathered information. When DeShonda Haggins began speaking to the press, she was not there to discuss Orion's personal life. She was not there to address the relationship or what it meant or how it reflected on her daughter. She was there to talk about what failed her child.
There is no way there should have been a handgun, an inmate with a handgun. And they're saying all these things about my daughter. Do they even know? Y'all, nobody knows the real story because she's not here to tell it. I just started screaming and panicking, and I didn't wait for nobody else to call because I just wanted to go and put eyes on my child. So we went to the prison.
In a statement,
Hagens also made a serious allegation about what happened to Orion's home in Statesboro in the days following the incident. She said investigators entered the residence and left it in a condition she described as destroyed. Trash taken from the dumpster outside the apartment complex and brought inside. Her grandchildren's belongings were gone. Old food and dirty items left throughout the space. The Georgia Department of Corrections did not publicly respond to this claim.
To put things in place and make sure the prisons are being ran correctly so that no other mother has to go through this, no other wife, no other sister has to go through this.
Hagens is left with Grace's Statesboro home that she says was destroyed when the GDC investigators allegedly searched it on Monday.
They destroyed my daughter's house. They took trash out of the dumpster in her apartment complex. All my grandchildren's stuff was in there, and they opened those trash bags up, left old food, trash, dirty diapers, all that stuff in my daughter's home.
Her interpretation of it was clear. She believed the focus was on building a story about what Orion had done rather than accounting for what had been done to her. Then she said something that cut through every other conversation happening around this case. Susan Burns, founder of They Have No Voice, listened to the 911 calls from that morning. She said,
literally, actually, ever seen that's related to a prison, and there's no one in charge, no one knows what to do. It's back the curtain on the lack of training, the inability to communicate. The question of staffing again comes into this.
She said it was the worst thing she had ever seen related to a prison. She pointed to what those calls revealed. Employees asking one another what to do, who to call, no one in charge, no one with clear direction. Former employees at Smith State had already been speaking out. Some who were injured by inmates were suing the Georgia Department of Corrections. The environment had been described as unsafe long before June 16th. In the weeks after the shooting, Governor Brian Kemp and prison officials announced they had contracted an outside firm, Guidehouse Incorporated, working alongside the Moss Group and CGL companies, to conduct a full assessment of the state prison system. Site visits, interviews, data collection across Georgia's correctional facilities over approximately 1 year, with findings to be made public. Georgia Department of Corrections Commissioner Tyrone Oliver spoke to progress, contraband removal initiatives, staff retention efforts, the dismantling of trafficking operations. He noted that approximately $7 million in contraband had been seized statewide in recent years. But here is what those statements did not address. A firearm had been inside Smith State Prison for nearly a year before it was used. The department had received an early tip in May 2023 and closed the investigation. They received confirmed intelligence 3 days before June 16th and still did not locate the weapon. And the inmates inside that facility had been photographing it on contraband phones since January, the same month Orion started her job. Multiple investigations, multiple reviews, multiple panels, and Orion Grace still lost her life. The Statesboro community organized vigils. Friends and family filled social media with memories. Everyone who knew Orion spoke about a woman who was present, who cared, and who was working towards something better for her children. Her 1-year-old son will not remember her. Her 4-year-old daughter will carry whatever fragments of a memory she can hold on to. DeShonda Hagens is raising those children now. The first warning came in May 2023. Confirmed intelligence came on June 13th, 2024. And on June 16th, 2024, Orion Grace walked into that kitchen at 4:30 in the morning to feed people the way she had done every shift for 5 months, and she did not come home to her children. She was saving for nursing school. She was working back-to-back shifts so her kids would not go without. She was a 24-year-old woman building something, and the institution that was supposed to keep its staff safe had known about the weapon inside its walls for nearly a year. The world keeps spinning, and so does crime. Stay observant. Listen to your instincts. Don't ignore the warning signs. I'll see you in the next case on Crime Yard. Thanks for watching.